Good afternoon. Coming back to this place, there are so many memories that I have. I remember meeting Pastor Stam, I think on that side out there, way back in 1978. Probably some of you, were not even that long, or probably were not born yet. I remember there were several things that probably, probably it came, while I was sitting just in the first night, I was happy to be here, but at the same time, I am kind of concerned. Because I am seeing that at that time, even about 10 years ago, I was here 10 years ago, our pews were reaching way back there. And now we're getting closer here. And so those are probably some of the concerns that I have. I have been in the grace movement for, since I graduated from the Bible school, it was way back in 1974. I went to the Bible school in the Philippines, run by the Things of Commission, way back in 1970. And after graduating, I served in the Philippines from 1973 to 1977. In 1978, I came to the United States and started applying for mission field. And when I returned to the Philippines, I met Pastor and Mrs. Vernon Anderson, and they invited me to serve in Indonesia. I was in Indonesia for 5 years. Served with them, and we started a Bible school. And by 1985, we were sent to Brazil and worked in Brazil for 13 years. That's where I met Bernardo and probably some of the other missionaries that are in Brazil. And once again, we started a Bible school. But of course, that was from 1985, late 85. And by 1998, we were sent back to Indonesia, and we worked in Indonesia for several years. And then I was again asked to go to the Philippines, return to the Philippines for 3 years, and direct Bible school in the Philippines. But at the time when I was, by 1998, when I returned to Indonesia, there are a few things that I saw in the mission field. Being away from Asia at the time, from the Philippines and Indonesia, several things that surprised me when I returned, after I returned to Indonesia. By 1998, when I returned to Indonesia, I saw some of the changes, big changes. And I know that probably if I want to continue, that's myself, that's how I am in the mission field. I saw that if I want to continue in the type and line of ministry that I wanted to continue, getting into the Bible schools and teaching in the Bible school, I know that right away I had to pursue for a higher education. And so I had to return. I was already in the age of 45, and I had to return in the classroom to get and pursue for a higher education. Indonesia, I know that Indonesia, probably to many of you, you've heard so much about Indonesia. Indonesia is the biggest Muslim country in the world. And when you think that's a place where jihad, they train jihad in Indonesia. The population right now is reaching about 260 million people. 260 million people, and about almost close to 80% of that are Muslim. So let's even think of 75% Muslim in one country alone. You are thinking about 180 million Muslim in one country alone. But we praise the Lord that in the recent years there are some changes. I know that probably some of you have heard about the persecution upheaval in 1997 to 2003. There was a real persecution against the Christians. And I was in some of these places. I traveled in some of these places and look at the damage that had happened. It's just like, when you travel, it's probably about 20 miles. Left and right, you just see remains of the buildings. Part of the building, part of the wall, it just burned down. Churches. There were about probably 3,500 churches that were burned down in 5 years. Burned down by the Muslims. I was talking to one of the members that are already a member in our church. By then he was a policeman and to work with the armies. I asked him, how bad was was the war? And he said, we don't go out at night anymore because we don't know who are our enemies. And so in the morning, they would go out and collect the corpse. And they would collect and put it in the truck. At first, they were digging holes to bury the dead. Pretty soon, they were tired of burying the dead, and they just throw it into the river. There's a big river that runs there. And it's just thousands and thousands of Christians. And at that time, Christians also were killing Muslims. But anyway, there were three places. That was in Ambon and also in the central Sulawesi and also in Java. But in the later years, it's about probably from 2000, something like 2004 until now, some changes had happened. These are some probably of the things that we would like for you to pray about, that it will continue. Because some of the changes are really on our side right now for the Christians. But the ministry, from 2005, we feel that the Lord has laid a burden in our heart to open another place to work where there is no grace movement. And so we decided to go to Papua New Guinea. We would like to show you some pictures of the was it A5? Okay. A5. Okay. Our headquarters is in Grafton, Ohio. That is the church. We are just based, church based. It's Grace Community Church. And we are, right now, we have a work that we have registered. Ministry, the name of our ministry that's being registered is Grace Beyond Borders Ministries. The reason why we have chosen this name is we felt that grace should not be confined in one place or in one organization. We should try as much as we can that we can penetrate to all the borders. Mission in itself, when we say mission, that means we geographically, we move. I mean, we cross a border. There is a cultural barrier that we cross when we are doing mission work. There are some social barriers, and there are some geographical barriers, and of course there are theological barriers too. And so that's why we think that when we say grace, we want really the grace to move and to cross all these borders. So we want to we choose them. It's a Grace Beyond Borders Ministries. Now we have myself, of course, my wife Ella and I, we have 4 children, and this is Jonathan in the center with his wife. They got married in 2010. On the back, it's Steve, our second son, and the front is Gisele. And then on the left side, on the right side, next to Ella, on the side of Ella, that's Gabriela, our youngest. This is my wife, Ella. She's from Indonesia. That's, I met her when I went first in Indonesia. That was way back in 1979. When you look at the map of Indonesia and Papua New Guinea, as you can see, I was coming from the Philippines, and this is Papua New Guinea right on the side here. Only part of Papua New Guinea that is being shown there. Half of Papua New Guinea really is on the western side is Indonesia, and the other side is Papua New Guinea. That's a place where, when way back in 2005, when we decided to go to Papua New Guinea, we decided to start work in Papua New Guinea. This is Port Moresby, and in that this is where we went. This is Vanimo. And we have a small church here, a congregation that's started by the Indonesian in Jayapura. And so we have chosen that place because it's too expensive to fly all the way from Manila back and forth. And so we can just cross the border. So when you cross the border, there is a fence there. When you take one step, you are in another country. But not only in one, it's in another country, it's different zone. And also, it's a different continent. It's no longer Asia, but it's Oceania. But when you backward, one step back, so you are in a different continent, in a different country, in different time zone. But anyway, we have also, at this time, we have another family that have joined with us who are in Thailand, in the city of Chonburi. Now we call them as tent makers, because there's teachers, English teachers, they were able to get into Thailand, and at the same time they are going to start a ministry in Thailand. It's only an hour drive from Bangkok. Later on I will show you the pictures. We used to travel. This is how we go to Indonesia and also to Papua New Guinea. From Davao, from the bottom, all the way up to Manila, and then down to Jakarta, and then from Jakarta to Manado, and then from Manado to Jayapura. Jakarta and Jayapura, it takes about 7 hours, flying hours. Probably half an hour stop. And then we used to cross the border between Jayapura, Papua New Guinea, and Indonesia. But lately, there are some things that happen. The government do not allow us anymore to pass through the border. And so what happened is that we are required from Jayapura to fly to Manila, and then down to Port Moresby, and then from Port Moresby fly to Vanemo, and that costs us a lot. It costs us at least $1,600 one way. And so it's only good for, visa is only for 2 months. And so that is one of the drawback that we have in the ministry. But we are thankful that we have a man right now that had finished from the Bible school. He had done his Bible school for 4 years. That's Wesley Tobon. Will be showing you some of the pictures later will come out on the slide. And now he is there working. So he is able to continue. But we are hoping that sometime in the future, something might be changed. But while we are also at the same time in Indonesia or in the Philippines, I take some invitations to speak in the conferences and also conduct seminars when it is necessary, when they want me to conduct seminars. There are some other grace churches that are not, in Indonesia, there are 3 groups. The main group that we have are associated with Things to Commission. The other groups, they are not associated with Things to Commission. One of the big churches in the city of Manado, they were also formerly with us, Yen Tato. Yes, this is the church of Yen Tato. He has a big church. He has a nice church. This is in the city of Manado. And they need of somebody to help them in their training theologically. And so we also go there and conduct training. Sometimes even the non-grace people invite us to conduct seminars, like the just regular Protestants. Here probably you would call them United Church of Christ. And conduct seminars in their churches. Also seminars. I've been to 2 seminaries, invited to conduct seminar and present our view, the grace message, because we are probably different because of the main Acts position. And even in small places, we have a school. 3 years ago, there's a school that we are running right now. It's a school, but it's a senior high school. But it is a Christian. We call it, the government is promoting this to help the Christians. And this is to me, this is really amazing because it's a government, it's a Muslim country, and they are trying to promote the schools and education for the Christians. And so what they are offering is that it's 40-60%. 40% theology and 60% secular. And so we design our own curriculum. For theology, we can teach our doctrine. And so for high schools, or from what they call kindergarten up to high school. And the government supplies us with office supplies, furnitures, and even buildings. And so if we have a lot, they will come and build a building. And this is in a Muslim country. And so in these last 2 years, the first graduates that we had 11, and this time we had 10. And most of these students, mostly of them, if I cannot say 100%, all of them get out from that school, they come to know the Lord, and many of them, mostly of them, are now active in our church. So we send them to the church that we have, the closest Grace Church where we have. Anyway, I know that my time is up. If you have some questions, this is Jonathan, and this is Steve. We have some brochure at the back, if you wish to know more. If you have some questions, you may ask. This is Gisele, who will be joining with us pretty soon in the school. She will be teaching. This is Gabriela. Any questions? Yes? Yes. That's why I was I felt that where there is a need, I just cannot, when I think I just want to just give this testimony. A few years back, maybe about 3 years ago, I was traveling, Ella and I were traveling from Tawau all the way across the island of Borneo. And it's a Muslim place. And we started at 6 o'clock in the evening, and this was just only like a Land Rover vehicle. And so we crossed, and this is about 10 hours to 12 hours drive. And getting dark and dark, and this is on the 24th of December. And our hearts, we began to think, man, this is where all Muslims, other passengers, the drivers are Muslims, and my heart was beating hard. And pretty soon, about an hour, 2 hours later, we saw some lights, blinking lights. Do you understand what I mean? In some houses, there were some blinking lights like that. And pretty soon, another 2 hours, we see some blinking lights. I know that they were Christians, because the only one that would have a blinking lights were Christians, not because of the Christmas. You understand? But our hearts, Ella and I, will just hold our hands and say, Mario, you see that? And I said, Mario, you see that? I've been in some places where there was no grace people. Just Christian. I mean, they were probably even Pentecostals. But in some of those places, you'll just be so glad to see that there are some Christians in a place where seldom you will see some Christians. My heart just think, how much more when you say we are grace people? And we put a lot of walls around us that we cannot have a fellowship with one another. I have seen in the Philippines, because there are some groups, maybe close to 100 churches that are not connected with Things to Commission. They don't have schools. No one is training them. Their leaders came up to me and said, Mario, we really need somebody to help us, to train our men. We need some people to help us to train our men. It grips my heart when you think of that. And these are grace people. We might become so grace. We are so grace, become so grace. Grace, really grace, but not very gracious. It saddens my heart. I do not know if there are some things we can change this in the future. We preach grace, very strong in doctrine, but many times we are not very gracious.